And thank you, everyone, for attending today. Welcome, and I appreciate your time. We're going to spend some time today talking about the Summon Quarterly Update, and I'll take your questions at the end. So please, as Scott mentioned, send in any questions you might have along the way, and I'll answer them to the best of my ability at the end of the call. So we've got a lot on the agenda today. We're going to review some of the recent updates to Summon, some of the new functionality you've seen delivered this past year. We'll talk some about the recently added content to the index and give you a heads up about a couple of known issues that are out there right now. I'll also talk about the next release. We're coming up on the November quarterly release, the last one of 2018, and the preview window will be open in just a couple of weeks here. And then we'll talk a little bit about community collaboration, what we're doing to plan for 2019, some recommendations on how you can get the most out of custom panes, a feature we launched about a year ago, and review some key upcoming dates and events that you might be interested in. So let's take a moment right now to review some of the recent updates, particularly new functionality, recently added content, and some issues. So let's take a look at some improvements to the user experience we've seen in the last 12 months. Saved searches. We've done a lot with this functionality. In 2017, it was the top saved searches in history. Search history was the top idea on Idea Exchange. In the first half of this year, in May, released this functionality. We have the ability to sign in with Google and save your searches from session to session. When you log into Google Drive the next time around, brings your saved searches back, and you can use those again for that session. We added more to this. I'll talk a little bit about that for the November release when we get there. You've also gained the ability to configure Topic Explorer and prioritize the elements that are presented, so you can turn any of those elements on or off and decide which order they come in. That includes encyclopedia entries, suggest librarian, related topics, and recommended research guides. And I think the biggest tweak that we made, the biggest improvement that we made to topics was to remove the constraint that you had to have an encyclopedia entry in order for Topic Explorer to display. So in the past, you had a lot more matches for topics than we have had topics displayed. Because if the source you chose, such as Wikipedia or Credo or Gale Virtual Reference Library or any of the many other items we have out there, if they don't have an entry for a topic that we can identify and match, then in the past, Topic Explorer wouldn't display. We removed that constraint so that now, even if there's not an encyclopedia entry, if there is a match, we'll display all the other information. So that's exposing more suggested librarians, related topics, and recommended research guides to your users and hopefully helping them get to the information they need. And then finally, you can also determine which appears first on that right-hand rail. Is it the custom panes or the Topic Explorer when they both appear at the same time? Next, I want to talk a little bit about improvements to the advanced search form. This was one of the items that came out of the new enhancement request system, or the voting system for Igloo and Illumina. As we finished up the 2017-2018 round of voting, I'll talk about what we have planned for 2018-2019 and where we stand with that. But for this one, it's the ability to turn on or off any of the fields on the advanced search form and determine the order of the fields as well, so that you can tailor it to meet your institution and your users' needs. Let's talk a little bit about some of the things we've done with the index. First, we increased the frequency of some of our ALMA updates. If you now go to Resources, Publishing Profiles in ALMA, you can schedule your published electronic records to Summon job for Summon over ALMA daily. Previously, it was done twice a week. Now it runs once a day at 2000 hours local time, which means that it aligns much better now with our increased frequency of writes. In Q1 of this year, we turned it on. We launched it at the end of last year and did some testing. And then in the first quarter of this year, we turned on increased frequency of writes. What that means is that if something exists within the index today, you can turn access to it on or off for commercial or open access content. So if something's in the index, you can adjust whether it is or is not available in your instance of Summon and have that take place, have that change take place within 48 hours or less. And I want to note that 48 hours is the worst case scenario. We run the process once a day. It's done at 7 o'clock in the morning GMT, which is midnight here in Seattle. And in order for it to take a full 48 hours to process, you would basically have to submit your changes at 7:01 a.m. GMT, and then there would have to be enough changes submitted within that 24 hours to take 24 hours to process. In most instances, the time to process is much shorter than that, 8 hours or so. So in most cases, you're going to get closer to 24 to 36 hours rather than 48 hours. But worst case scenario, if you do activate something or deactivate something in your instance of summon within 48 hours, that change should be reflected within your instance of summon. We've also been working on the increased frequency of catalog adds. As much as we possibly can, we're trying to improve the time it takes for you to make changes to your instance of summon and get those out to your patrons. For this one, you can now add content to your catalog, and it will be processed in 24 hours or less. And again, 24 hours is the worst case scenario, and that depends really on how frequently you publish your catalog information. In many cases, it will be processed within the hour. It can take a little longer based on the number of records being processed, loads on the system, and other factors that might adjust it. But for the most part, within the hour, they should be processed. Twice weekly, there is a point where we do pause these processes for a little while we're doing the search index update, where we completely update the entire index. And so on Sundays and Wednesdays, there is the possibility that you may have to wait up to 12 hours for that change to take place. But for most cases, within the hour, it will be changed. And again, for some of our Alma customers, ads will be processed with that daily update. So once a day, when you publish those, within the hour, those changes will be made. We also made some changes to how your catalog records merge. Now, if you'd like to, you can opt out entirely of merging catalog records. So that means that you won't merge with other catalog records or any commercial or open access content. That gives you increased control over what you display for those catalog records. In the admin console, if you go under content ingestion, you'll find the catalog merge setting page there, which will allow you to exclude that. This will be included in the next scheduled search update, so that needs one of those twice weekly index updates to pass in order to make that update, and all records will be opted out. If you want to see how to do this, you need instructions. There is an article in the Knowledge Center under Summon Catalog Merge Opt Out. And any feedback on this, please let me know. We've had this in place since May, and again, it's something we really want to get your feedback on. So if there's something you can do to improve it, or if there are things that you like about it, please feel free to reach out to me and let me know. In addition to working on the processing of the index, we've been working on relevance as well. Right now, we're in the process of implementing a journal ranking boost. It's based on journal title keyword searches. If you search on those and you match a journal title, we take a look at its ranking and give that record a boost based on if it is a highly ranked journal. In addition, we've done some improvements around did you mean, specifically for French and German. We updated the term dictionary, and we also made a modification so that if you have your user interface set to French or German, that will give that language a boost for suggestions in that language. We already have that in place for a variety of other languages, including Japanese and Chinese. We also did some work on Korean, Hanja, Hangul transliteration improvements. We now have a filter that handles cases where multiple readings are available for a given set of characters. So when there are variations in Hanjas, such as your traditional versus simplified Hanjas, the system should be able to handle those better now. We also increased and improved English synonyms, addressing a variety of spelling variations that we've seen that we haven't handled as well in the past. So we've improved things such as the handling of the two variations of paleopathology that you see here on the screen. Next, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the content that we've added. So we started off the year with less than 3.2 billion items. We're up to 3.3 now and greater than that, continuing to grow. We add content to the index judiciously. We take a look at the quality and the metadata before we add it. We make sure we've got a continuous pipeline of new content being added, as well as hundreds of updates, so that all the time you're getting the most recent updated content that you possibly can. Here there are 3 examples of some collections that we've added in the month of September. There's a much longer list than this. I want to point out in the lower right-hand corner of the slide here that URL for the content corner and the release notes there. There are now content release notes. If you haven't found out about those or you haven't seen them, I highly recommend you go there. If you go to the Knowledge Center, navigate to the Summit area, and look for Content Corner, there's a variety of information there now available talking about content we're adding and content we have added as well. So if you haven't found that out yet, it's a great place to go see what's happening in the index. Next, I just want to touch on a couple of known issues that are out there right now. First off, this was posted on the listserv. In case you missed it, I just wanted to highlight that if you have an embedded widget, so if you have a search box embedded on one of your pages anywhere on your site, I would recommend that you go update that widget if you haven't done so in the last 2 to 3 years. Please update any embedded widgets. If you have an older widget and it's based on this 1.0 code, we no longer do use cases or tests against 1.0 code. Most of the issues that might have happened in 7.1.0 will be caught through our QA testing, but we don't specifically look at 1.0 anymore since that's been retired for a few years. So recently a change happened where by default there was a switch such that those older widgets were by default searching beyond your library's collection. Again, we could fix those things as they come up, but the safest thing for you to do is to go out and update your widget. You'll find that in the hamburger menu on your Summit site, but on the widget builder, it's really easy to go through, pick the style of widget that you want, conduct a search, and put any constraints or facets on there that you'd like, and then take the code and replace it with the other one. And that's just a good housekeeping thing to do in general as well. Another known issue is that for the last 2 months in OBI, there was an error introduced at the beginning of August, so the month of August and September. We were not counting sessions appropriately. Each search was being logged as a session. The way that the header was loading, the timing of it made it look like every search was a session. The result of that is that means total sessions are much higher than they should be. And you'll probably find them to be somewhere between 2 to 3 times higher than what they were year over year. That will, of course, depend on the volume of activity you have at your site or past patterns that you see of how people search. The average session time is also lower than expected. As the number of sessions is greater and each search is treated as a session, that time is much shorter than it should be as well. If you look year over year and you look at the general ratio that the sessions are off by, you can back into an approximation of what those numbers should be for August and September. However, because of the way it was logged, we can't go back and reprocess the information and correct for the error. So that has been corrected as of October 3rd and should be fine moving forward. Upcoming releases. I want to talk a little bit about the November quarterly release. So we've had 4 releases this year, and we're coming up on our last one here. It's due for the first Wednesday in November. That's November 7th. That includes the preview environments and full documentation. The preview, as I mentioned, will be available in a couple of weeks on October 24th. And you'll have 2 weeks to check that out before it goes live. As a reminder, the first Wednesday of all other months, we have planned maintenance releases. These are limited to features that usually don't impact the end user without activation. There's no preview environment or documentation. On the rare cases where we do have something that impacts the end user or you, or it does require some documentation, we will notify you and we will send them out. But for the most part, most Wednesdays, first Wednesdays of the month, you'll get a maintenance release that's just full housekeeping. As I mentioned, this is the 4th of our quarterly releases this year. We delivered the February, May, and August releases on time. I already spent some time digging into some of that functionality there, but as you can see, I just did the highlights. There's a lot more on here than we talked about. And then in the individual releases, there's always a lot more details in those, but these are the highlights of all the great features that we did this year. And November in particular, we've got some good stuff coming out. I'll highlight each of the ones we're delivering. One thing I want to highlight is that at the beginning of the year, we talked about having citation trail and link data support in the November release. As I talked about those through the year, I did highlight some of the challenges that we might run into in making sure that the data in the back end is cleaned up and working well for providing this functionality. The work there took a little bit longer than expected, so we have shifted those two features. Citation trail should be available in Q1 of 2019, and for link data support, we will be doing something with that in 2019. I don't have the date for that set yet. And as we finalize the roadmap, which I'll talk about a little bit later, we will get a date for that, and I'll share that as soon as I can. Let's talk about what you will get in the November 7th release. First off, enhanced autocomplete. I know there's a lot to see on the screen here, but there's just so much goodness in these enhanced autocomplete. I want to share as much as possible. There are a couple of different improvements here. In the past, you would get a recommendation for a potential search term, similar to these lists of heart failure, heart attack, heart disease here in the heart example on the right-hand side of the screen. So that was the old enhanced or the old autocomplete. Those recommendations were based on search terms across all of Summon. With the new enhanced autocomplete, we do one better there, which is we base those recommendations first on your institution's popular searches. So we take a look at what's being searched on at your institution, and those get a boost. And then we also take a look, as we have in the past, for terms that are Summon-wide. That way you get the benefit of the searching power of all the users of Summon. So that baseline autocomplete recommendation is improved. In addition, we now make recommendations from topics, best bets, and database recommender. If you take a look here, some of these at the top that are blue that say nanotechnology, carbon nanotube, those are topics that are being recommended. As you can see, in some cases, there'll be more than one topic recommended. And then you also have things like best bets. Down here in the left-hand corner, it says English literature and is labeled library recommendation. That's a best bet. So you get a lot more here. You bring a lot more to the user, so they're hopefully getting to the resources they need faster and discovering the items that you have in your institution. So that will be available as part of the November release. In addition, for some of the Roma customers, we have added the ability to browse for course reserves. You can navigate by course ID, description, or instructor. There'll be a separate tab that you can click to have a search dedicated to course reserves. And then as you type things in and you search, that course reserve list will narrow down to hopefully the course reserve items that the individual is looking for. Again, currently this functionality is only available via Summon over Roma. And then we've done some improvements around saved searches as well. If you didn't know, when we first introduced it, you were able to sign in with Google Drive and save it from session to session. You now can also go in and do a just one session save search. So if you want to save a search for your session, it will be maintained on that saved search page. As soon as you leave the session, you'll lose that information. But if you'd like to save it beyond the session, not only now can you sign in with Google Drive, you can also sign in with Microsoft and use Microsoft OneDrive as an option as well. So you can configure this on the back end. You could make it so that you could use either or both as possibilities to save beyond your session, but hopefully this adds some more flexibility to meet your users where they are, and hopefully give you some options for places to save this information that aligns with your policies on your campus. And we will continue to look at how to improve this, but this is what we've done so far. Okay, next I want to talk a little bit about community and collaboration, particularly touch on the roadmap for 2019 and where that stands, and then talk about some of the opportunities that we have coming up. So let's talk a little bit about the 2019 roadmap. I'm in the process right now of planning to build out the 2019 roadmap. In doing that, I have a variety of conversations with internal teams, with our customer support, our implementation, and a variety of folks in development to determine their recommendations or suggestions for the roadmap. We talk to external folks. I do a lot of road shows during the year and gather notes during that. I have a lot of one-on-one conversations with institutions and individuals And then probably the best source, in addition to the idea exchange, is the NERS voting process. So to me, this is a really important part of being a Summon user. This year, the Summon working group pulled some ideas from the idea exchange and took this through the voting process. We're still in the process of finalizing the list that will be included for the 2019 roadmap. These are the top 10 items as voted on by you, the members of IGLU and Illuna. And again, we're in the middle of conversations with the Summon working group, and we'll determine the final list. And when I have the new roadmap ready to go, I will publish it so you can see. But again, I just want to highlight the great work that your working group is doing for you to help advocate for this functionality. And again, I'm really excited about what we get out of this. One of the things we got last year out of the NERS voting, and I think one of the best features we've added to Summon in a while, is the custom panes. And the reason why I bring that up is the next thing I want to share around community and collaboration is a great article that we put together based on all of the things that you and that we have put into those custom panes. So the name of the article is What Kinds of Things Can a Library Put in the Summon Custom Panels? If you go to the Knowledge Center, you can find it based on that title. You can also follow the short URL down there in the lower right-hand corner. I highly recommend it. It's got a lot of copy and paste code that you can use, code to help you develop a publication finder, external search by link, expanded facets by default. So it's not just adding panes, it's also adjusting or managing functionality on the page using the JavaScript capability of those panels. LibGuides, in-page chat widget, other LibGuides, a drop-down list. And again, if you have other things that you've done that you don't see on this page, please feel free to share that with me so I can add that on there so others can benefit from that. But also, there's a lot of great things in there that you can take, and as I said, copy and paste, and maybe with a little bit of tweaking, you can drop that into those panes and put them to work for you right now. So thank you to all the institutions that have contributed so far. Again, please, if you're doing some cool stuff out there with custom panes, let me know so I can add that to our list. Next, I want to talk a little bit about some upcoming dates that we have and events. So in a week, we'll be having a call with some of all the customers. I have sent out an email to folks who should be interested in that. If for some reason I've missed you, please reach out to me directly and let me know you're interested in attending this call. And again, that'll be next Wednesday at 2 p.m. UTC and 6 p.m. UTC. You'll see my email at the end of the presentation if you need to reach out to me. Also, Illuna has a call for proposals. The deadline is December 17th. You can go to the URL here on the screen to find out more about that. And Illuna next year will be in Atlanta from April 30th to May 3rd. So please put in any proposal you might have and come visit us in Atlanta and present what you're doing with Summon to the larger user group there. So these conferences are always a great time for me to get out and talk to and meet people. There's a lot of good sharing of information on how things are working together. So please do make an attempt to get there. And if you have something you'd like to present, we'd love to hear from you. Next, I want to talk a little bit about a Summon Analytics webinar. The title of it is, Our Users Are Doing What? Understanding Usage Through Summon Analytics. We'll be doing that 2 dates at the end of this month and the beginning of the next. So Tuesday, October 30th and Thursday, November 1st. There are 2 sessions there. You can go register using that bit.ly in the middle of the screen. So that's some great information that we'll be sharing there. So please attend if you can. 2019 ALA Midwinters here in Seattle where I am. Hopefully I'll get to see some of you there. So please come on down. And then again, as soon as I have that Summon 2019 roadmap, I'll share it, and we'll have our next quarterly webinar in February. So all of those things are coming up. And that brings me to the end of my prepared slides.